Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Today, we're tackling something I think a lot of us can relate to, especially this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
New Year's resolution.
All those.
We're using the Wikipedia article on New Year's resolutions to kind of unearth the history and psychology behind this tradition.
Cool.
So we're going to figure out why we make these resolutions, why they're so hard to keep,
Right.
and how we can maybe actually set ourselves up for success this time around.
It's a good goal.
It is a good
Yeah.
goal. So one of the things that I found so interesting when I was digging into this is that New Year's resolutions aren't, some new thing,
Yeah.
like some self-help fad.
It's not a new thing.
This goes way back.
Way back. Yeah. Like 4,000 years back to the ancient Babylonians.
4,000 years. What
Yeah.
were the Babylonians resolving to do 4,000 years ago?
Well, during their 12-day New Year's festival, it was called Akitu.
Okay.
They would make promises to their gods to kind of start the year off right,
Yeah.
hoping for good fortune in the coming month.
Mm-hmm.
Things like returning borrowed farm equipment or paying off debts.
So it's like I'm going to get my act together this year. Kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't just the Babylonians, though, right?
No. The Romans also adopted the practice. They shifted the timing to January 1st
Oh,
to
God.
coincide with the Julian calendar.
Of course.
And their promises were made to Janus, the god of beginnings and endings,
Makes sense.
the
Yeah.
namesake of January.
Right, yeah. Janus, like with the two faces, looking back, looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of fitting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And that practice of, looking back on the past and setting intentions for the future
Yeah.
continued to evolve, through the centuries. Like, for example, in medieval times, knights would reaffirm their vows of chivalry at the start of each year.
Oh, interesting.
So we see this pattern across cultures
Yeah.
of people connecting these resolutions to these important events.
Yeah.
So, it's showing how deep this desire for self-improvement is.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if it's just part of like who we are
It's a good question.
as humans, this kind of drive to better ourselves, especially when like a new year,
Like fresh start.
a fresh start rolls around.
Yeah.
So speaking of history, there's this diary entry from 1671
Oh, yeah.
by a woman named Anne Halkett. And she actually wrote down a list of New Year's resolutions
Wow.
a lot of them were based on Bible verses.
Interesting.
So even, way back then, this
Mhm.
idea of the new year as a chance to, live a better life.
Try to be more virtuous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what about more recently, like the 1800s? Were people still making resolutions then?
Oh, yeah. By the 19th century, resolutions were so common that they were being satirized in magazines. Like one publication even joked about politicians resolving to only have the good of the country in mind.
I feel like some things never change.
No, they don't.
Like poking fun at that gap between our good intention and then what we actually do.
Our follow-through.
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of how we even talk about resolutions,
Yeah.
the phrase New Year's resolution,
Yeah.
it first appeared in a Boston newspaper in 1813.
Wow.
And get this, the article even talked about how people tend to overindulge in December and then try to make up for it with these grand promises in January.
I mean, sounds familiar. Right.
So relatable.
Yeah.
Even, centuries ago.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like in modern times,
Yeah.
how many people are actually making resolutions?
Hmm.
And then how many are keeping them?
Right.
Like, what are those numbers?
Let's look at some stats.
Okay.
So way back at the end of the Great Depression,
Mm-hmm.
only about 25% of American adults were making resolutions.
Okay.
But fast forward to the 21st century, that number jumped to 40%.
So more and more people were making them.
Exactly.
But are they keeping them?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, isn't it?
A 2007 study by a psychologist named Richard Wiseman found that 88% of people failed to achieve their New Year's resolutions.
Wow. Okay, so most people.
Most people don't succeed.
Yeah, but before we get like too bummed out about that,
Yeah.
didn't you say there's kind of a silver lining there?
There is. Research has shown that people who make resolutions are 10 times more likely to make a positive change than those who don't.
Okay.
So even if we don't always succeed,
Yeah.
the very act of making a resolution seems to increase our chances.
So the intention matters.
It really does.
But if so many resolutions fail, what is it? Is it just willpower? Or is there more to it?
I think it's a lot more than just willpower. There's a psychology
Yeah.
to resolutions that we need to understand to really get why we struggle.
Okay, so we've got the history. We're starting to dig into the psychology.
Yeah.
So let's get into why these things are so hard to keep.
Sounds good. So one thing that really matters is how we frame our goals. So you've got approach-oriented goals and then avoidance-oriented goals.
Okay.
In approach goals, focus on what you want to achieve. Like, I want to cook more healthy meals at home.
Okay, yeah.
Versus an avoidance goal, which would be like, I want to stop eating fast food.
So you're focusing on what you want to gain instead of what you're trying to like get rid of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And studies show that people who set those approach-oriented goals, they tend to be more successful.
Yeah, because it's a more positive
It is.
way to frame it, right?
Definitely, yeah. It's a lot more motivating
Yeah, totally.
to think about what you want to gain.
So, but even with, a positive mindset,
Right.
resolutions often fail.
They do.
So, like, what are some of the reasons why? Why do people trip up?
Well, one common pitfall is setting unrealistic goals.
Yeah.
In that study where 88% of people failed,
Yeah.
35% of them said that their goals were just too ambitious.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that new year, new me.
Totally.
And I'm going to do all these things.
Everything at once.
Yeah, and then, a week later, I'm like,
Reality sets in.
yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing is not tracking progress.
Yeah. A third of the people who failed their resolutions
Okay.
said that they just weren't keeping track of how they were doing.
So it's like you need to have some way to measure it.
Yeah, you need some accountability.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What are some good ways to kind of stay on track and measure, I guess, how you're doing?
Well, I think visual reminders can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So things like sticky notes with your goals
Mhm.
or a vision board,
Yeah.
something you can see every day. Having an accountability partner can make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, the buddy system.
Yeah, exactly.
It really helps to have somebody, to kind of keep you on track.
Definitely.
Cheer you on.
Keep you motivated.
And what about when life just gets in the way and we kind of forget about
Oh, yeah.
our resolutions?
It happens. 23% of people in that study said they just, forgot about their resolutions.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And then lastly, there's the danger of trying to do too much at once.
Oh, yeah. I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah, you make this long list.
Like, I'm going to change everything.
And you just set yourself up for failure
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah. So basically, it's like, be realistic about your goals. Make sure you have a way to track it. Don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
But then there's this other thing that I thought was interesting, which is there's a study that focused specifically on weight loss related New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
And they found that even when people were monitoring their progress,
Yeah.
it didn't really impact their weight loss.
Yeah. They weren't seeing the results.
So even if you're doing
The right thing.
all the right things, it still doesn't always work.
It doesn't. And that kind of highlights that intention is important, but it's not enough on its own. We need to combine that with a good strategy
Okay.
and understand how our brains work.
So we've got the history. We've dug into the psychology.
Yeah.
Now let's get practical.
Okay.
What can we actually do to make these resolutions stick?
Yeah. Let's get into that.
I feel like we've gotten so much good info already.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
So for anybody listening who maybe made some resolutions a couple weeks ago and are already kind of,
Falling off the wagon a little bit.
yeah, falling off the wagon,
Okay.
is there still hope? Like what can we do?
Oh, there's definitely hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late to reevaluate, readjust, recommit.
Yeah.
Remember, even if you stumble, you're still 10 times more likely to make a change
Yeah.
than someone who didn't make a resolution at all.
Right.
So think about it. You've already got a head start.
That's true.
Take a moment to reflect on your goals. Are they realistic?
Yeah.
Are they framed in a positive, approach-oriented way?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a system in place to track your progress?
Yeah. Good points.
Yeah.
So we've spent, this whole episode looking back at the history. Yeah.
The psychology of these New Year's resolutions, we've learned that they've been around forever.
Way back.
They're more popular than ever.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they fail.
They do.
But I think we've gotten some really good insights into how to make them work.
Absolutely.
So, but is it kind of disheartening
Yeah.
that so many fail?
Yeah.
Like, does it make you feel like, what's the point?
Well, I think the fact that we keep making resolutions year after year,
Yeah.
it really says something about us, about human nature.
Yeah.
It shows that we have this desire to grow, to evolve,
Yeah.
to become better.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's not always about the outcome.
Yeah.
The striving matters.
Yeah, that journey, like you said,
Yeah, exactly.
is a victory in itself.
It really is.
So even if we don't, achieve every single goal we set for ourselves,
Right.
it's still worth it
I think so.
to try.
Yeah.
And maybe this year, armed with a little bit more knowledge.
A little more insight. We can actually make those resolutions stick.
Here's hope, Imrat.
Fingers crossed. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive
Yeah, thanks for having me.
into the world of New Year's resolutions. We'll be back soon with more deep dives into all kinds of fascinating topics.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep those resolutions close and those goals in sight and your motivation high.
Definitely.